And let's see, everybody's all rigged. I'll stand a bit back. And the first question that sort of comes to mind, we've obviously got quite a bit prepared here, is a little bit on the difference between Norway, Europe, Silicon Valley, yeah? Because I know you've also been a little critical that Norway isn't really the best environment for new technology startups. Archna and Rolv have been and seen the hallelujah in Silicon Valley and probably know a lot more examples, and even the ambassador knows.
I'm going to still point out that we got a big activity going on in Boston. You keep talking only about Silicon Valley.
Yes.
I don't know what
I
I'm
will
supposed to say
read up about
that.
Boston, but before you leave, I will definitely know all about the Boston experience. But let's talk a little bit about the, compare and contrast Silicon Valley, Norway, Sweden, the rest of Europe. What's hot, what's not? Is it creating advantages and disadvantages?
Should I?
You can go ahead first.
I think one great thing with Silicon Valley is the mentorship and the mentee. It's like you can ask people about help and advice, and they're not going to think you're stupid, because you need that. You're not going to pull this off on your own. If you're out there to change the world, nobody changed the world by themselves, and that's something I think we can learn in Norway. That no matter your age, you should be able to tap into somebody who's been there, done that, who can give you some advice on your way. And that's why I'm a big fan of Mesh and what they're doing, because they're bringing experience together with inexperience and ideas. So, yeah.
I think there's a whole environment there, sort of what we call clustering. And people, the companies in Silicon Valley, Boston, Norway, elsewhere, they're in competition, but they all work together. In other words, they eat together, they talk together, they expand on each other's ideas, and it's very, very important. That's why the Mesh thing is great. And I was at a startup lab yesterday, the startup lab at the University of Oslo, not yet, Monday maybe, or last week, and putting people together who are just smart and want to talk about ideas and work together, and the financial groups will find you there. And Norway's a little bit late to the game, I think,
Yes,
on that.
That's what I feel, because I still regard myself as a young entrepreneur, and when I started, or when I was kind of getting into the Norwegian incubators, I felt that I was being put into a system that where I didn't have choice to do the things that I felt was right for the company. I was a part of a program a little bit too much. I came into, you should do this, you should do this. This is where you should apply. And what I liked about the international scene is that it was more driven by and for founders, and you had somebody doing great events that were really into that. You had somebody doing networks that were really into that. You had somebody creating platforms for connection between founders and investors. You had different groups of founders and people at all different stages. But the thing was that you had a great cooperation between the government part, creating the frames for entrepreneurship, and the entrepreneurs themselves creating things for themselves. And also another very interesting thing is, I was in New York last summer, and the leading people in Amex, they were at a place called General Assembly, and they were sitting down listening to a couple of 16-year-olds who told them about how they use technology. And they were, the Amex people, they were sitting down like this, the bosses, focusing on what they had to say. And I have never seen that in Norway. Leaders, 60 years old, trying to understand and kind of respecting that new way of thinking, and kind of understanding that there is a technological, really big shift.
That's because they all come to Silicon Valley and sit down and listen to
That's where they dare. What do you think, Rolf? You've seen it on both sides, yeah?
Yeah, I think it's all about attracting talent. I think Silicon Valley has been great in attracting talent. It's just being there. I came back last week, and just by going to the coffee shops there, to Starbucks, you see all these great people sitting there and working and having these great ideas. But that's exactly what the guys like you are doing in Mesh, and that we are doing in Startup Lab at the universities. Get talent together, and if you do that, you can stimulate them. So that's my real job. What I want to do with my life now is to stimulate young people to go for their own idea. Because I think if you ask people, so what's the best place to work? Statoil. Hey, my vision is that 2 years ago, 2 years from now, 3 years from now, where's the best place to work? For myself. I mean, that's what we want to. We want to stimulate people to start their own companies. That's where the future of Norway is. And I think these initiatives with Mesh and Startup Lab is definitely going in the right direction.
And just to comment on that, what I think is really important is that people like you, with networks and experience, both kind of the professional but also the personal experience from how it is to start something, go back into the community and drive it and mentor it and invest in it. Because that's something we really need to have more impact and to take companies beyond 5 employees and local impact.
Yep.
Well, you've also got a little. Well, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Daniel
Just a
first.
slightly different. You want to take the question first? Or?
No, let me just go to him, then we'll go out. Sorry, I'm looking one way.
So just a slightly different perspective, but Holder Jord, we are a not-for-profit organization, and one of the things we've seen is that it's, or we see ourselves as social entrepreneurs, but it's a bit difficult to get support and funding for these kind of initiatives in Norway, because we see that a lot of funds are channeled through the government, and for instance, compared to the US, where you have a lot more foundations that you can apply for funding from. So that's also, I think, one difference for an organization such as ours.
Good point. And you had a...
I have a question for the ambassador. He said about how he was involved to be ambassador, but how did they win the election? Was that because they have very good internet campaign, or that they was knocking on the door for people, convince people to vote for the Democratic Party in USA? We need to learn for USA for now is election in Norway. Well, we learn usually 8 or 10 years later.
Well, a lot of lessons there. Your electoral system is quite different than ours, and the experience is very different. Recently, we had Jim Messina visiting us in Oslo, and he was the campaign manager for President Obama in the re-election campaign. And we had him actually speak to 7 each of your party leaders here, talking about what would happen in the election. And I was even amazed. I wasn't there in 2012, but I was there in 2008. And Messina said that when he took over the campaign and the president asked him to run the re-election campaign, his first comment to the president was, "We're going to run it totally differently than we ran it in 2008. And 2008 was the most brilliant campaign we've seen, computerized, whatever. He said, no, in 4 years, the technology and the way people communicate has changed so much that we're going to do it totally differently. They use social media in a way that nobody had dreamed of before. They did the door-to-door and other things, but that was all based on the information that they had been able to gather through social media and reaching out. And they'd send out emails, but they'd also send out SMSs and whatever the latest communications mechanism that was going on. And you wouldn't believe the networks that they had whenever they sent out a communication. So they knew who was knocking on which door, and they knew what the response was when somebody answered on the door. And they only sent people to places where they thought they might get a favorable result. I mean, the technology was both the technology, the computer technology, and the use of it, and they're all kids. I mean, Messina is maybe 40 years old, and he was running the campaign, and he was using 19, 20, 21-year-old kids to do most of the work and setting up the computer programs. I talked to the Prime Minister after we met with Messina and just mentioned the campaign. And he looked at me like I was from a different world. And he's a terrific politician and very successful, but you just don't do things that way in Norway. And part of it is you may not allow people to gather information and store the information that they had. And so some reasons not to do that. And so he also mentioned your campaign's a month long. Our presidential campaign for 2016 has already begun. I get questioned all the time, will Hillary Clinton run? And then you get all the Republicans who are fighting. You haven't really started your campaign for 2013. So it's very, very different. There are a lot of lessons if they're interested. And, Messina offered to come and help, but nobody took him up. It's probably too expensive. But
I want to go back to Rolv here. Because I think what we saw was really an amazing tool, and for me, and I guess more probably for you guys, it's why don't schools use this more? Yeah, well, why isn't the uptake in the school system so high on computer-based learning or game theory learning? I'm not quite sure what the sexy word is these days. What are some of your reflections on it? How hard has it been in trying to get it into schools, or you're not concerned about that?
No, I definitely, last year when we were thinking, should we go for schools or should we go for parents? It's very simple. Parents, they are so concerned about the kids, they want to buy this for the kids, no problem. Schools going to take a long time. And one of the key challenges that we've been seeing with schools, and this is like 36% of all math and science teachers, 36% are 62 years old or older. I mean, they're not even using email, some of these guys. and it's difficult. It is difficult to start trying to do something else when you are 62 years old, and I acknowledge that. So I think the way forward to work with schools is very simply that we need to prove that it works. We need to get in there in the classroom. We need to see. We need to have like kids down there playing with Dragon Box, and the teacher, whatever age that teacher is, needs to see how the kids are lightening up and smiling and laughing, how they teach each other how to do things and how much they learn. And after 2 hours, just give them a pen and paper and then see how many can solve equations. Because 80% of the kids after 2 hours can solve equations. So they need to see it and they need to believe in it. And it's also back to schools. How much money, what's the percentage of the school budget, education budget, that is spent on R&D? Hey, in US, it's 0.2% in US. And how much is Microsoft spending? 16%. Google, 18% or something. So it's like too much little is spent on R&D. And the beauty is, if you look at the business environment in Norway or in the US, what's the 10 biggest companies in the US today? Take a look at those logos. None of these logos were out there 30 years ago. If you look at the 10 biggest, largest universities in the US, they were there 100 years ago. It's the same university. Very little innovation are happening from inside, but things are changing. And I just had these meetings with Stanford. I guess you were there also, and things are happening. But I'm not sure whether the change is coming from inside or whether it's coming from Khan Academy and other people.
I have an example. I went out of school 2 years ago, and I had a course in product development, and my book was from 1973. And that, after reading that, I gave up, because that's just bullshit. Having a book about product, updated product development from 1973. So I instead of doing that, I started Googling things, started going to Khan Academy and TED and learning from other places. And I'm inspired by people, by, for example, General Assembly. Instead of being taught by a professor that was active 40 years ago, you can have Mark Zuckerberg telling you about how to create a social network. That's more interesting, and that's more direct, and that's more updated knowledge. And I can learn whatever I want going online. If I want to learn about design, if I want to learn about a programming language or whatever, I can go online and do that now. And more people are realizing that. And for younger people, this is also a natural thing to do. Because you use all the different kind of technologies and possibilities that you have, and you communicate with them. I have kind of closed groups for topics I'm interested in on Facebook with friends where we just share things we're interested about. For example, we're creating a makerspace now where we're gonna have 3D printers, laser cutters, and things like that. And we have about, I think, 100 people in that group. And I don't know anything about 3D printing, but if I want to know something about it, I just type, how do you do this and that? And I'll get 10 replies on how to do this and that. And that's so much more effective than going to a class and listening in and falling asleep and doing that.
But let's take a little more general, big picture view. Where do you see like the big changes happening in technology that are sort of driven by the youth? Or is it Boston? It's Boston.
No, it's not Boston.
That's what you're going to say. Sorry.
It's not Boston. I just don't want it to be forgotten. Okay. But getting back to the education, I mean, there's a major revolution going on in education. Yeah. Not necessarily in what you're doing, which is great. The internet has changed it. If you noticed, Stanford, you were just there in Stanford, they're going online with their educational system. Harvard and MIT have got a conglomeration going together to do internet education. It may or may not be the professor that's too old for you, but it will change, because I think the whole way we educate people is coming under total revolution, and you'll see it very, very different. And especially for parts of the world that people who can't afford to go to Harvard or Stanford or whatever will be able to get education online. I'm not sure whether that wouldn't be more boring, but in any event, that's one of the major changes in how we deliver educational services.
Yeah, I
think
mean,
it's happening.
I don't know about you guys, but I've been online at Stanford and looked at what courses I could take, and I've been to Harvard and so on and so forth. My only challenge is finding the time to actually sit down and take the courses, but they really are readily available, and it's phenomenal, like you say, who you actually can say you're in a class with. Yeah.
I think it's amazing that you can get top-level education independent of what geography or how deep pockets you have. We heard an example earlier today about this kid in Sierra Leone who was making robots because he did an online robotics class, and we're going to see much more of that, leveraging the gap, and that's going to be amazing.
But anything more from technology? Give me some really
Yeah.
big, sexy things that are happening. Yeah, you know.
Yeah.
Archna.
Where did I start now? So education, as we know it, will be
Revolutionizing, yeah.
disrupted. Stanford is pushing the envelope there together with MIT. IT security, because we're all going to be connected, we all are going to be smarter. It's going to be hackable, easy to hack a lot of things. We're sharing so much data. So we're going to see a lot of new companies come out in the IT security space. Design, I think, will be even more important. It's no longer about the businessman or businesswoman or the businesses or the enterprise. iPad, iPhone, iPod showed us it's about me. It's about the consumer. So we are pushing the whole, I don't know, consumerization of enterprise. So we're going to see better design and usability in enterprise software, and that's about time. And then you have a lot of stuff going in robotics and automation, which is more like in manufacturing. I had one story I forgot to tell. I had coffee with a guy who is like Mr. Robotics in Silicon Valley the other week, and he was telling me, hey Archna, it was this grad student from Stanford who wanted to grab a coffee with him because he was finished at Stanford and he was wondering what to do. And then my friend here, he said, so what do you want to do? No, I want to do a startup. And he was like, in robotics. And then he said, so what kind of robotics? Manufacturing robotics. So this is one guy, he could get like any job in the world, get a nice salary, but he wants to do his own thing. He wants to develop the future of manufacturing robotics, which is just amazing. And we were both going, when we were finished school, it was all about getting that job, like, you know, finding your spot in that system. And then that's what's going on there. It's like, yeah, they want to do their own thing to figure out, like we were talking about, I can do this better. How can I do this better? What if we did it like this? Which is just truly amazing. And that's what I think all this online classes are going to open up new ideas and ways of thinking that people haven't been exposed to earlier. Because
Daniel, did I hop over you?
No, it's fine. But I just an online course to recommend. It's Michael Sandel's course on justice from Harvard. I've been really hooked on that, and many of my friends have been discussing that a lot. But one trend I think we also see is that increasingly the data and the information as such is openly available. We, for instance, we have placed, even though we have done a lot of work developing our database, we license it out freely for anybody to use. Because we believe that's the right thing to do, and also that it's the right thing to do for us. Because what we are eventually selling to companies that we join into partnerships with isn't the information, it's our skills and our ways of presenting it in a simple and easy way. And I think that's also something that really comes from young people, because we, and I still count myself as young, but also younger people than me, have grown up in a world where everything is shared all the time and don't really understand why things aren't available. So I think this is really something that just comes natural for young people.
So the content won't be proprietary anymore. We don't look at it that way. You look at the skills around it as being more the what
and that's a pretty big shift. And for instance, in the media world, it's a big challenge for newspapers to kind of adapt to this new reality. But I think it's going in that direction clearly.
It's more, No, I just wanted to say, if Google doesn't have it, then it doesn't exist. It's more like.
Anders?
Yeah, another cool macro trend, if you can call it that, is so far you've had kind of this tech revolution online, And the online economy, the web-based economy, is a fifth of the physical economy still. Buying these things, for example, is still a part of the physical economy, and that's 5 times bigger than the online economy, I think. But what you're seeing now is that the technology and also the prices of manufacturing tools have come down, so you can create communities around that and democratize making products into smart products.
Yeah.
So, for example, you could put some sensors into these that would say that, okay, these are only being played once a day. The opera doesn't deserve to have these because they don't use them enough. It could communicate with a database and say that we should move these to mesh because they need loudspeakers every day because they use them a lot more. And you could create smart products, and there's a huge potential in that. And we're only starting to tap into that through maker spaces and the maker revolution. And that's a major potential change, that we will start to connect smart products to the internet. That's also a very interesting thing that could change and could have big implications.
And two out of the biggest areas, obvious areas, but I'm surprised we haven't mentioned energy. The way we deal with alternative energy in the next 10, 20, and 50 years will be revolutionary. I don't want to say anything about Norway, but I'm a firm believer in a certain period of time we're not going to use so much oil, if any. 100 years ago the energy supply was totally different. It's going to be totally different when you grow up or your kids grow up, and so and also healthcare. I mean, we're pushing the envelope every day on what we do in the healthcare industry, and lots of opportunities and companies in that area. So there are two other just large areas where we'll see huge changes, I think.
In technology. I've got lots of questions because I really dig this topic, but I want to go out, and you were so fast, so you get to have the first one.
Wonderful. My name is Sharma. I have a question for Anders. In your encounter with Norwegian politicians, do you sense that they're seeming to be or caring for more tech startups in Norway? Almost 70% of our exports. Almost 70% of our exports in Norway is now oil-based, which makes us very vulnerable. Do you think the politicians in Norway are waking up to that fact and catering for new startups in a good enough way?
Catering for new startups. Yeah, I'm assuming you mean equity, you mean money, yeah? Or okay.
I'm not 100% sure. I was lucky enough to be in the government's entrepreneurial council 3 years ago, and I came in. This was right after I had been around for half a year, and I had so many ideas about things I wanted to change, great ideas, and I came in with one good point after the other, I thought. But I noticed how, for example, people like Rolv with a little bit more experience, they listened to him. No matter what he said, he got kind of the better of me. And I went back and started thinking, why is that? And I started looking at how is the power structure here? What is listened to? And what I found is that it's a lot easier to be listened to if you name experts. So experts, and also what they do in Sweden and the United States. Those things are the most effective way of getting your point across. And that scared me a little bit, because I had all these great ideas, but to get them through, I had to find something that they had done in Sweden or the States, so that you could kind of get some other people to quality check it. And if that's the way we do it, then we'll always be 5 years behind, because you need people that are in a position of power to understand what needs to be changed and look at the kind of the content. That's what I also love about kind of Silicon Valley, the meritocracy part. They look at what you know, and I feel that they judge the core of you more than the position you have. For me, there was a huge change when we sold our company, even though it was a small company. I sold the company when I was 25 or 24, and from the day before I sold it to the day after, the respect I got from everybody was just two different worlds. And what I said was so much smarter and so much better. So there's something about the hierarchy. You have to have gray hair and experts on your shoulders to be able to mean something, and that's not innovative.
What do you think about that, Rolf?
I think you're right. It's a big challenge that Norway is going as well as it does with the oil and everything, because we're not that hungry. And if you're not hungry, you will not go the extra mile. Very simple. And I think that's probably the biggest challenge. We had a discussion the other day with regards to, is it really a place to invest in Norway versus Boston or Silicon Valley? And that's a very good point, because what we said is, we're a startup lab, it's a great country to start up with, because if you fail, you still have your salary. But the investor very clearly said, you know what, that might be a challenge for investors, because they want you to feel the pain if you're not succeeding. So you need to be hungry. And I think the reason why Finland, why Nokia happened, was that they needed to do something. They were hungry. They needed to come up with something. And I think also that's one of the reasons why Rolv started, is because Nokia didn't manage. They need to come up with something else. So if you don't feel the hunger, it's difficult to come up with something. But that's why I think it's important to create environment like Mesh and what we have up at Startup Lab, because we want to give people the push and motivation to keep going the extra mile, because it takes a long time and motivation to do that.
But first, Archna, Innovation Norway. This is sort of part of your, the overarching aim of Innovation Norway is entrepreneurship and helping startups. Do you have any comments on?
Well, so we are very dependent of Startup Lab and Mesh, because these are sort of the funnel to the companies that we work with over in Silicon Valley. We only work with tech and scalable tech companies over there, but here's where they start.
Yep.
And here's where we see that they need the mentorship, they need a network of people, and when they're ready to make that step over to our area, we're there, waiting for them, so that they can plug in their laptops and start making money.
Ambassador White, you wanted to add something?
Well, I was just going to, a little bit on what was said. There is a little bit of a cultural difference between the United States and Norway in a lot of things. I mean, you start with your sense of everybody's sort of everybody's equal, and sort of a different base in terms of the willingness to take risk and do different things. In the United States, we sort of feel that everybody has an equal opportunity, and those who succeed, we applaud and we really reward. And it's a little bit different mentality here. And I think as we talked even about some of the laws and your tax program and starting up businesses, there's not as much incentive to start a business here and succeed as there is in the U.S. I mean, I represented Innovation Norway when I was a lawyer in Boston. And, one of the things anybody in the U.S. who wants to come to work, where's my stock options? Where's my ownership interest in a company? Norway makes it very difficult to share under the laws and tax laws ownership interests in startups. It's a different mentality.
I want to shift a little bit, because there's one thing about technology that we all know, and that's sort of the downside. I mean, all kids, just about everyone. How many people here are on Facebook? Yeah, that's pretty. What about Twitter? Yeah. There's probably something else I should ask, and I don't know what it is, but those are the two that I know. Mobbing, yeah? There's a downside to technology. You're out there. Your profile's out there. Yeah, and what do you guys think of that? It's not all positive, this technology development. How do we develop some kind of social, a social profile in the use and also the future development? I mean, it's not only because of the development you're thinking of internet security. It's also to protect us as individuals. Yeah.
I always get amazed when I read comments on news articles, because I'm like, are these people like this in real life, or are they just pretending to be like?
Exactly.
Like, what is really going on here? And my vision is, and I'm hoping that me as a person here and now, and me on Twitter, me on LinkedIn, and me on Facebook, it's going to be the same person. Because you can't live different lives just because you're online. You can say whatever you want. And so I'm hoping that the next generation doesn't have these issues, because they're kind of more aware of who they are, no matter if it's on Facebook or on LinkedIn. I think that's my...
Hopefully they'll be more aware.
But I think it's also, they are more aware. And I think if you look on the comment fields on newspapers, it tends to be not 15-year-olds that sit there and complain. It's old guys, basically. I think this problem is, or it's going to be there forever, I think, because there will always be, diversity of people, to put it that way, out there. but I think the people who are worst are actually older people.
The older generation.
Or older generation. Yeah.
You do.
A good thing is that they're starting to take the anonymity away, so that you have a face when you comment, and you are your own person when you comment. That's a good thing. That
Yeah.
makes it a little
So
bit
you know who
harder.
they are, is that what you mean?
Yeah,
So
I
that,
can't go in. If there's a story about Archna, I can't go in as an anonymous guy and said, she shouldn't be able to, she's a girl, she shouldn't be able to mean anything about this. Then my name will be there, and the picture of my face will be there instead. And I'll be the one who gets out of it in a bad way. So that it's getting less anonymous, which is good.
Yeah.
Maybe helping, yeah?
I can
Archna?
say just one thing, because you all use a lot of apps and services. We're used to rating stuff. You're rating restaurants, you're rating movies. I think the next thing is going to be that the cab driver is going to rate us. So it's going to be like, how are you? Yeah, really,
As a customer.
why would he pick me up? I never tip him, right? So we're going to see more of that.
So they'll be able to trace your usage of the
So,
cab.
oh, that's the girl who doesn't tip. I don't want to pick her up.
Interesting, interesting.
I think we're going to see more of that, so you really have to be true to who you are. And then just, whether it's online or offline.
Oh, I like that, I like that. Yeah?
Yeah, this is also a question regarding culture. If, for example, Archna talked about in the US, people are allowed to make mistakes and people talk about their failures as you did. But here in Norway, I think there's the janteloven. So doing mistakes, people are kind of laughing and talking behind your back. What do you think we can do to change the culture?
So you have oslo.thefailcon.no coming up in
Exactly.
June. Go
In
there.
June
Or
7th.
B Square. No. I mean, embrace it. And I mean, the most fun stuff is to go to FailCon in San Francisco.
But
and
tell what
Silicon
it
Valley.
is, because not everyone
That's
will
where
know what it is.
entrepreneurs share what, like, the stuff, what they didn't do, basically, and should have done. And that's so much more learning than saying, oh yeah, I did this, and then I scaled and sold, and I made billions. Instead of saying, ooh, I should have probably... It's just about learning from their failures. And it can be quite fun. So I think I would... June 6th, I think, in Oslo.
7th.
7, June 7th.
Sorry, I know that. But how's that going to help Norway? That's just, you know...
That's a good start. I hope that you will see people from different companies there sharing some of their failures. Otherwise, it will be a failure, the whole conference. Which is not that good.
Any other... Yes?
In Germany, I think this culture here is not as bad as maybe it might look now, because we think that in Norway people are not fair compared to Germany.
It's all relative, in
So
other words.
it is,
Yeah.
I think it's much closer to that culture already than we really want to have, and that is less pressure and more sharing. That is really to the good of all our results.
Let's go to the ambassador.
I just wanted to say that when I say this, your culture is different. There's not necessarily better or worse or wrong. I mean, you know, this is a country that's rated the most livable, the place that people most like to live and have the best lives. I mean, so this is just if you want to create a different kind of environment for certain groups of people. Don't take this as a criticism of a culture. I mean, which, you know, you've got, you know, as good a country and so many blessings and do such wonderful things around the world. I don't want to sound critical of the culture. There's a difference in some of the entrepreneurial stuff and how it's incentivized. But, you know, the way you live your lives are different than the way they live it in Silicon Valley, and there's a lot to be said for both. Let's not get carried away with being critical of the culture.
Mr. Meltwater. I'm sorry, I don't know your true name, but I know you started Meltwater. I didn't hope that wasn't rude, but...
I was thinking about the infamous janteloven. And of course, I grew up in Trysil, you know, that's a pretty special place in many ways.
Yeah.
But I think one reflection I have is that maybe we need to stop talking about janteloven, because I think it also becomes a cop-out.
It's a self-fulfilling prophecy, you think, yeah?
It's not only a self-fulfilling prophecy, but I also think it can also be an excuse, right? So if you think about sport, we have world champions. We love our athletes. We love the winning athletes. We even love athletes that are not politically correct, right? So there's something fundamentally in the Norwegian culture that, you know, support and aspire winners. So janteloven is not the whole picture. So I think we need to embrace the winning mentality on Norway. I think maybe a bigger problem with Norwegian culture is that we have it too good, we're not hungry. And I think that janteloven becomes a convenient excuse for not trying hard enough or succeeding.
Good point. We need to sort of change our mindset. You first, and then the lady in the back. You.
You know what I mean? Yeah, I see, I live in Rogaland, you know, Stavanger area. And there we not talk about janteloven, that finished for 20 years ago. And there's so many more opportunity, you know. And we are much more closer now to USA and we were for 20 years ago. So this is finished that time, you know, with the janteloven. And two, you said about the old people complain. I bike and travel with people on the whole world. And afterwards, people complain as much young people as old people. And I travel with people that are blind and deaf in Norway abroad as well. They sit on computer as well. They are blind and deaf. And they complain as well as young people. It's just the same. We are more like a copy everybody. Before we were more original people in Norway, now we get copy more of it.
Okay. Janine? Yeah?
No, I was just, several of you talk about mentoring, and sometimes it was a little bit of the younger adults. But what I'm both as a concerned mother and as a citizen, I am really looking for a mentoring program for videregående, and especially one of my sons, who I have scoured all the different schools in Norway. I can't find one that offers any kind of creative outlet, specifically coding, anything with coding or computer programming or any kind of design work. And so now I am attempting to supplement his education with a type of mentoring program, whether it is in design, whether it is in coding or anything. And I was just wondering if you know anything, if you can create anything. But the only thing right now in Norway, they're starting a new videregående called Kuben. Yes. But as far as I understand, and they use the word innovation, but it's designed towards the oil industry. And so the idea is there, but they're missing the mark. And I know my son is not the only. They say we're going from the information age into the conceptual age, but I don't see any kind of development happening in Norway. And so as a mother, I'm trying to make this happen for my children.
Very good point. Because I mean, there's lots of parents who see that their kids are so technologically savvy, yeah? But there aren't any outlets, yeah? Oh, sorry, yeah?
I have an interesting point on it, because we don't have enough founders to look up to, and when you look at entrepreneurship, for example, there aren't too many stories, personal stories or interesting stories about people who are really passionate about what they do and pursue it and actually kind of make their own path. You will hear about people when they reach Jørn's level, but for me it is and has been hard to relate to people that have 1,000 employees and that are all over the world and are from 10 to say 40 years older than me. So I've read a lot about Mjåset and Stordalen and all these people, but it's not natural for a student to relate directly to them and jump into a startup. If you go to Sweden, not further than that, you have founders of Klarna and Spotify that are my age. They are around 30 and they've created international companies. For me, it's easy to relate to them, and you also have all the levels in between. And for young people in high schools or students, I think those are the people that need to address them. I had a talk yesterday for 25 high school students, and it was supposed to be 15 minutes, and we ended up talking for about an hour, even though they were in the middle of their russetid, and they were a little bit into alcohol, kind of, yeah, but still, we ended up talking for about an hour because they could relate to me. I look about the same age, and we could talk about the same things, and they recognize maybe a value set and understanding of the surroundings and the culture that's similar. So I think we, young founders, if we want to get people to become founders, we need to go out into the schools and mentor.
Rolv?
But I think coding is definitely something that is interesting, and I know that there is a big initiative going on now, Lær Kidsa Kode, which is coming from some really people that feel they want to do something with it. And I know also from our end that we are very much considering whether our next game should be a math game or whether it should be a coding game. So we have a very interesting coding game on the drawing board, but with limited resources, we have to decide. And we're not making that decision 10 days from now. So your input might help there.
Archna,
Yeah, I
did
just
you-
wanted to say that does the mentorship have to be a program, number one, and two, does it have to be local? Because I had coffee with the people at Mozilla. They're running their accelerator or incubator program, Web Forward. They never meet with the companies. It's all in the cloud. And I think that's a future that's already here, that the mentor doesn't have to be in Oslo. Depending on like if you
Good
even
point.
screen, I'm sure that there already are a lot of good online classes. Udacity have great classes, and also mentors that are willing to share their time with people on the other side of the world just to help them.
Courses, you can take coding.
There are-
Code.org, there's
Yeah.
a huge campaign going on.
Learn to code, yeah.
All of that is fantastic, but it's like what Anders said, when you've got a 16-year-old, it's that you still have to have the personal. And that is the most motivating thing. It's a mentoring, a true mentoring.
Yeah, that's the thing that I think we kind of don't consider strongly enough. Because for me, what I felt from I was 21 till 25, my biggest challenges related to a startup weren't the professional choices and where to go and what to do and finding investors and employees or those things. Those were really big. But my biggest fear was of kind of losing my motivation, of psychologically breaking down personal stuff, and to be able to talk and relate to people and people you respect that also can help you through those things.
Powerful.
Powerful.
We have two more questions, because I have the last one, sorry. You had your hand up.
I just have a comment. Archna made a very good comment regarding not being in a physical space. We just kickstarted this project, the STEM project in the Caribbean, and we had mentors from all across the world, and I'm one of them. So here in Norway, I'm actually mentoring a group that's in Trinidad and Tobago. So it is possible if you have the commitment and drive.
So the learning experience can
I
definitely
think that our
go,
kids are going to be working with coworkers they're never going to meet in real life. That's the reality of the future. So it's about how do you build that relationship through telepresence or Skype or whatever. That's the way this is going.
I have one last question, and it actually, I'm building on something that was brought up earlier, where a moderator said, you know, how do we accommodate youth in technological development? Do we get more seats at the table, or do we have to design a new table?
Design a new table.
Design a new table. I just want your vote.
Remove the table.
Oh, okay, there you go. That was remove the table, design a new table.
Yeah, I don't know. That's a tough question. It's I think it's all about stimulating people to feel the hunger, and it's like Steve Jobs said: "It's stay foolish and stay hungry." That's about it.
So you're just yeah.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter. The table.
no.
The table. Gotcha.
I
Okay, Daniel.
I think the guy from Sri Lanka, there was a very good point this morning that it's not about either or, and you have to kind of bring people together. If you just focus on young people, then you kind of forget about the rest, then it doesn't work either. So
Exactly. Yeah.
From what I've seen at this conference, they're at the table. They may be owning the table. When I
There you
see-
go. There you
know,
go.
when I see all the people and the great things that they're doing, I think just keep doing what you're doing. I think it's a combination. You need the youth and some of the mentoring and some of the experiences us older people have are interesting. And in fact, a lot of what your technology is going to be designed for is not only going to be for the youth.
No.
Because one of the things you're going to see in terms of markets, there's no question that the biggest fastest growing market are people, the elderly and the retired. And some more of your products are going to need to be designed to be sold to us.
Just to take an example of it, how many people here are under 25? Raise your hands. That's 20%.
That's a little bit more than 20%.
Okay,
almost.
30. I wanted to make a point. I hoped it would be a little bit clearer.
Sorry. Okay.
But my point is that we have to the generation that is in power has to start including the next generation, because the shift, maybe because of technology, is as big as it is. So, but yeah, bad point. It was pretty.
No.
25. So good conference then.
Okay. You have your one last question. You can.
Yeah, it's related to, I'm from Latin America, and I see that that probably all these things that we are talking about are, I mean, I have to accept it, and in some of the regions and parts of Latin America, we are a little bit behind on that. And also my organization, 8 Million Leaders Fund, we work with affected populations and vulnerable youth. So I see that they don't have access to this technology, and I see that the way that we have to work with these young people, it's like not the same. So I would like to hear about the vision from you. How do you see, or how do you think, what do we need to do to get this kind of entrepreneurial ideas and creativity and innovation to these developing countries or to certain populations?
Real quick. Anybody feel call it?
Bring. So I didn't get the country.
Latin America? But
Okay.
he's speaking
No,
in
because
general
I
for
spent
the
a week with a lot of enthusiastic young people from South and Latin America, and we talked about like Startup Chile and some of the different initiatives that are going on. Bring people, fly them over, and have them talk to youth in your countries. Let them tell the youth their stories. I'm sure some of these are going to end up mentoring them. That's what goes on. I have a connection for you that I would like you to take contact with in San Francisco after this.
There you go.
There's a lot going on, even in Latin America. Yeah.
But on that note, what I'd like to say is I think we need to add some chairs to the table, and we need to dare to go to new tables. Yeah, and we need to make new tables. So I think we need a combination of all. But I got to say, you know what? I am so looking forward to when I'm 100 years old in my wheelchair and to see all the apps and everything that's going around and how my kids are able to communicate with me and hug me even though they're miles and miles away. Because and I do really agree. I think technology is going to develop in a phenomenal way, and it's going to have a tremendous impact on the elderly, or the ones that are getting older. But I really can't wait, because I see what's happening now, and I think it's exciting. So thank you for participating in this workshop, and I hope you got a takeout.
Thank you.